Nice segue into the Minister for Immigration, because, Minister, we've been talking a lot about the impact of improving productivity in the industry, and one of the big issues for us is labour shortages. And we certainly believe that skilled migration is a large component of that, but also we're a big believer in training Australians up and more apprenticeships and so forth. So it is a good time for you to come in and address our leadership from around the country, and particularly interested in understanding how we tackle the conundrum of needing more people, including migrants, but also dealing with housing crises and where do we actually house them. So could you please welcome the Minister for Immigration, Andrew Giles. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you.
Thanks very much, Danita. I was kind of hoping that you were going to solve that problem for me, though. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be with you today, and I do thank the MBA for the very kind invitation to be here. I begin my remarks by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're all gathered on, paying my respects to elders past, present, and those who are emerging. Thanks to Danita, of course, and to Craig for having me here. And I guess in preparing my remarks, I guess I wanted to start with this proposition. It's really hard to think of a more significant sector in our economy and indeed to our future national prospects than building and construction. Nor, as Danita's opening remarks suggested, a more important national conversation than this one that you've just leaned towards. And I guess in response to that, it's really critical to emphasise that for the government, our housing and our migration policies are working together. We are delivering the right settings to build more homes, and we are in particular redesigning our visa system to promote a greater skills focus. Now, I don't need to tell anyone in this room, I hope, how important building and construction is and the incredible history it has in Australia when it comes to nation building. Because perhaps our most famous nation building project, the Snowy, saw 65,000 recent migrants from 30 countries build it over 23 years. And I see this as a really powerful symbol of how we became the country we are today through the enormous contribution that skilled migrants have made to our identity, our economy, and our future prosperity. And I think it's important too to recognise that building and construction is a vital part of both the Australian economy and Australian life too, because we know how highly Australians value their homes, whether as owners or as renters. This is an industry that shapes how we see ourselves and, too, the priorities of government. Again, I'm proud of the strong housing policies that this government has through delivering the biggest single investment in social and affordable housing in more than a decade, with the Housing Australia Future Fund now established. This is something that will help deliver the government's commitment of 30,000 new social and affordable rental homes for the fund's first 5 years, and applications are of course now open. We're also working with the states and the territories to help them meet the ambitious new national target to build 1.2 million well-located new homes over 5 years from July through our $3 billion new homes bonus and $500 million housing support program. This, of course, builds on the accord we announced in last year's budget, which includes federal funding to deliver 10,000 affordable homes to be matched by states and territories. We're also delivering immediate action, like the $2 billion social housing accelerator for around 4,000 new social rental homes around the country, again in partnership with states and territories, as soon as possible. And we're putting up $575 million in funding unlocked from the National Housing Infrastructure Facility, with houses already under construction around the country, with a further $1 billion now committed to the facility. Now, of course, we're going to need the capacity and the capability of the workforce to be built if we are to effectively service all of these demands. And alongside and in conjunction with our skills and training agenda, one of the pathways to doing this is, as Danita said, skilled migration. I was going to reply to a couple of the messages, which takes me to the migration strategy, which was released on the 11th of December of last year, which is built on 5 critical objectives, all of which support the government's productivity agenda and which we see as being imperative to building a skilled and adaptable workforce. These are objectives which will guide us to raise the living standards of Australians through boosting productivity, meeting skills shortages and also supporting exports. Ensure a fair go in the workplace through complementing the jobs, wages and conditions of all workers and preventing migrant worker exploitation. I'm very pleased that legislation just passed the Parliament, supported unanimously to make some very significant changes in that regard today. To build stronger Australian communities by better planning the migration intake and also giving migrants the opportunity to invest their lives in Australia through permanent residence and ultimately citizenship. To strengthen international relationships by building stronger economic and social connections with our region, and to make the system work, and this is perhaps the most important element in a day-to-day basis for people in this room, by being fast, efficient and fair for prospective migrants and employers alike. For businesses, fundamentally, this means getting the skills you need to grow and be more productive. We will be removing barriers in the system that prevent highly skilled migrant workers from coming to Australia, and I'll speak about some of these barriers in a moment. In realising this new vision and broader objectives for Australia's migration system, an ambitious roadmap for migration reform has been developed. Now, it's not going to be delivered by next week. It's an ongoing agenda founded on deep engagement with business, with trade unions and with civil society. The first tranche of this seeks to address and streamline a number of skilled visa priorities. Now, the first key action of the migration strategy is building a new temporary skilled migration system so that we can effectively address skills needs and enhance worker mobility. The Skills in Demand visa is a temporary skilled worker visa valid for up to 4 years, and it replaces the temporary skills shortage TSS visa and its 3 streams. And I do know that there are concerns in this room about elements of the design of these policies, and Danita wrote to me late last year expressing her disappointment that the industry has been excluded from the specialist skills pathway. So it's important, I think, that I make this clear today. The government isn't making it harder for tradespeople to come to Australia. We are making it easier for employers to get access to the workers they need for their businesses. All employers will benefit from these changes. We've increased the length of the visa to 4 years, up from 2 years under the former government. This is something that provides security and certainty to employers, as well as, of course, to the potential migrants we need to attract. Offering pathways to permanency for all temporary skilled visa holders gives employers the ability to attract and recruit on the international stage, knowing the competition that exists for skilled tradespeople. This is so important given the nature of that competition across so many of the countries that we see ourselves as compared to. We've reduced the work experience requirement from 3 years to 2, recognising that the labour market today is quite distinct from that which existed back in 2017. We've streamlined labour market testing, removing the requirement to advertise on the government website, which was, of course, introduced under the former government. These are policy changes that reflect the feedback that I have heard loud and clear since I became the Minister 20-odd months ago. Now, I don't shy away from a frank dialogue, and I recognise the MBA and members here would have preferred to have skilled trades workers included in the specialist skills pathway. But I strongly believe our new core skills pathway will facilitate access to skilled workers when there is a skills shortage in the building and construction industries. I believe that the raft of changes that we have overseen, administrative as well as policy reform, ensure that the visa system is in much better shape for construction businesses than it was prior to the last election. The investment from this government in more staff and resources for the Department of Home Affairs means that we have developed world-leading visa processing times. It now takes a couple of weeks for a temporary skilled visa to be considered, as opposed to the months and months it was taking beforehand. And I'm proud to say that the 2022-23 migration program was delivered in full for the first time in many years, highlighted by 142,000 skilled migration places, accounting for 73% of the overall program. And from July to December last year, there have been over 6,000 permanent and temporary visas granted for workers in the construction industry. This is on track to eclipse the 10,500 visas which were granted for the industry last year. Now, our changes are also designed to make working in Australia more attractive to prospective migrants, and one thing that I don't think we talk enough about in our migration system is just that, to look at it from the perspective of the person who is thinking about making a life or coming to work in Australia, and recognising too that many of them aren't just looking at Australia. Now, to recognise the importance of this, I've already spoken about extending the time for workers on visas and developing clearer pathways to permanent residency. We've also raised the temporary skilled migration income threshold, which will be replaced by the core skills threshold from 53,900 to 70,000. This is the first increase since 2013 and aims to ensure that visa holders are not paid less than an Australian worker in a similar role, and so that Australian workers are not disadvantaged, preserving the social licence for the program and also protecting the integrity of the visa system. Now, I'm aware that there is a very long history of migration rules being swept away at a moment's notice. When the former government abolished the 457 visa, they did so without speaking to industry or indeed to others in the sectors. This resulted in immediate backflips as occupation shifted from list to list with uncertainty prevailing. Now, this government works in a different way, focused on the national interest. And I will keep listening to feedback and concerns as they are flagged with me. My door is always open. And I do look forward to more and deeper engagement with the construction industry on the visa system to ensure that the migration system is playing the role it should play insofar as your industry operates, which is something that is facilitative rather than determinative of wider policy outcomes, particularly given the scale of some of the challenges we've touched upon, particularly with housing. Now, in conclusion, this isn't a promise to always agree, but it is to always engage and always to listen attentively, because that is what delivers good public policy outcomes and good outcomes for the businesses in this room and those who are represented by the MBA. Thank you very much, and I really look forward to the dialogue.